Today I'll be telling a story about a man who lived in a cemetery naked. He also tended to howl day and night. He cut himself and bruised himself with stones. And after the story, we're going to talk about some interesting questions, so please stick around till the end. Welcome. My name is Kathy, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. Today's story is about a man who was extremely tormented down to the depths of his soul. We don't know how long he had lived among the dead, but one day he was rescued and made whole. But his peers were not too happy about that. So after the story, we'll look at some questions to ponder in order to see if maybe we are tormented and perhaps need some healing. So please, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe button if you like it and if you want to see some future videos like this. So now, on to the story. A long time ago, there was a man who lived in a cemetery. He was what people might call crazy, insane, not in his right mind. He was a very tormented soul and went so far as to hurt himself with rocks. He would cut himself and bruise himself, and he would howl for hours on end, day and night. He also was naked. People could not even go by there anymore. No one could get him to stop his behaviors, and or put clothes on, so they would put shackles and chains on him to try to prevent him from doing these things, but he just tore those off. Now one day Jesus happened along the way and told the spirit that tormented the man to leave him alone, get out of him. Well, this really took the spirit aback. Apparently when Jesus spoke, Jesus' very speech tormented the spirit, just like it was tormenting the man. It begged Jesus to leave it alone. It even went so far as to ask Jesus a favor. It wanted to go down into a herd of swine that was close by rather than into the dark abyss. Jesus asked the spirit its name. Legion, it yelled out, because we are many. So Jesus allowed the legion to go into the swine, which the swine immediately went to a nearby lake and drowned. Now the herdsman who had seen this ran to the town to tell all the people what had happened. Well, of course, everybody wanted to come see what happened, so they ran off to the cemetery. When they got there, lo and behold, there was Jesus and the man in his right mind with clothes on. They were just sitting there chatting. Now remember, these people had tried to help the man, so they knew exactly what he had been like. You know what happened? They got really scared. So much so they asked Jesus to leave. All right? So Jesus obliged, and as he was getting into the boat, the man who had been made whole begged him to let him go with him. Please let me go with you. Jesus wouldn't let him go. Jesus said, you go spread the good news about God's mercy and share all that God has done for you. So that's what the man did, and everyone who heard it was amazed. So here's a man extremely tormented, and for whatever reason, people tried to restrain him rather than help him. Perhaps they tried to help him initially, who knows, but clearly they did not know what to do with the man. So the question is, have you ever been restrained by people? Or have you ever tried to restrain others? Now you might wonder what that might look like. Well, it could look like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Or perhaps, you're not going to finish that. Why are you doing that? Or perhaps, what makes you think you can even do that? But maybe in reality, we just feel helpless, we're uncertain, we're fearful about how to help someone sometimes, and so we just use words rather than trying to go forth and use actions to help them. Or we judge them, which is really the easiest thing to do, and we somehow believe that lets us off the hook. But think back to the story. Here is Jesus, which is light, and the darkness is among the dead coming toward Jesus. The Spirit is moving the man away from the dead that surrounds him. I wonder about this man and when he very first started moving into darkness. I wonder if perhaps he didn't blame others. Did he say something like, this is just the way I am. They'll have to take it or leave it. And didn't ever really do any kind of self-reflection. He held on to this thought so tightly that darkness soon overtook him, and he didn't really even know who he was. So he moved in with the dead, because he really did not know how to be with the living any longer. But Jesus was having none of it. Come out of him, he commanded. And so it was. Now, of course, the swine that Legion or darkness wanted to go into was considered unclean. So unclean, wanting to stay with the familiarity of uncleanness. Isn't that the way it is? How often might each one of us, rather than surrendering to the light, cling to what we know? We enjoy being in our comfort zones. We don't want to be pushed out of our comfort zones, making judgments in order not to look at ourselves. As a matter of fact, sometimes we make judgments and we feel even a little bit better about ourselves. But then what about when we move closer to the light and begin to change and walk into our likeness of the divine? And by that I mean following what Jesus taught. Love your enemies. Do unto the least of these. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and your neighbor as yourself. Taking the last place instead of trying to be first, and living into the Beatitudes. Imagine having the Beatitudes posted in our public buildings instead of the 10 Commandments. There would be no thou shalt not, but there would be this. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure of heart. Blessed are the peacemakers, which we could really, really use right now. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. No, people aren't fighting to have the Beatitudes posted in our public spaces. But I digress. Let's get back to the story. So after the herdsman told the townsfolk what had happened, of course they all wanted to see for themselves what had happened. Sure enough, they got there. There was the man with clothes on. There was Jesus. The man was in his right mind. And they were just chatting. They were talking. And rather than being excited that this man was made whole, the townspeople were terrified. So much so that they asked Jesus to leave. But let's not be too hard on them. Can we always say we've been happy about somebody's healing or somebody's success? Have we always welcomed back someone who has been a victim of darkness like addiction or abuse or control or lying or stealing? Might we often say, we'll see how long this lasts, or perhaps, she's wanting something, nobody can change like that. Or maybe, he's gone overboard this time, all he does is talk about God. No, let's remove the beam from our own eyes before we go judging the townspeople. So they want Jesus to leave, and he doesn't stay where nobody wants him. So the man who had been made whole begs Jesus, begs him, please let me stay with you, let me go with you. The man clearly wanted to stay near the light. Perhaps he was afraid of what would happen if he didn't stay close to his Savior. But Jesus tells him, no, you stay here. Go tell about God's mercy and tell all the good that God has done for you. I think Jesus was saying that when you do this, God is always with you, so not to worry. Now notice, Jesus did not say go win converts, go capture other nations and force them to give up their way of life, feed and shelter the homeless, and then after you can give them a good sermon. Downgrade and disregard people who believe differently than you. No, Jesus did not force himself on others, and he does not want us to do it either. It's simple. Go tell about God's mercy that you have received and all the good that God has done for you. That's it. In spite of our own shortcomings, in spite of our own selfish behaviors and desires, we can move into our own transformation and change. When we do, we simply share God's goodness and mercy. Maybe people will be amazed at what they hear when you do that. And if they're not amazed, don't worry about it. It's the Spirit's job to take care of the rest. So what can we take away from this? 1, ask yourself what legions torment you. 2, what are the chains that bind you? And how did they get there? 3, what do you find so difficult about surrendering? 4, in what ways have you asked Jesus to leave? And 5, what can you tell others about God's mercy and goodness? Think on these questions and see what you come up with. Thank you so much for watching. Leave comments in the comment section. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe button so you won't miss any more videos. Also, be sure and review the DreamWork videos from last year. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.